Now, I'd like to turn to the United States and welcome Democratic Congressman Ted Deutch to the program. Congressman Deutch represents Florida's 22nd congressional district and is a senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, on which he serves as the chairman of the Middle East, North Africa, and Global Counterterrorism Subcommittee. Now, Congressman Deutch is also co-chair of the House Bipartisan Task Force for Combating Anti-Semitism, and he's joining us to discuss the need for a whole-of-government approach to combating anti-Semitism wherever it comes from. So, Congressman Deutch, welcome.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me to join the conference. Back in 2014, when we formed the task force, we were witnessing a notable and troubling spike in anti-Semitism incidents in Europe. So the 8 co-chairs, 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans, decided to invite the ambassadors of France, Germany, and the UK to discuss their government's efforts to address anti-Semitism in their respective countries. Back then, as we focus on what was happening in Europe, I don't think that we'd soon have to turn our attention inward and respond to a growth of anti-Semitism here in our own country. And at around the same time that the task force held this briefing, an association of countries came together under the umbrella of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance to adopt a working definition of anti-Semitism along with examples. Since then, this definition has been adopted by about 28 countries, the United Nations Security Secretary General, the European Union, the Organization of American States, even European football clubs. And the definition wasn't just pulled out of thin air. It was developed with thousands of years of experience with this age-old hatred. The IHRA definition states that anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. And to make it even more relevant and applicable today, the authors included examples of modern manifestations of anti-Semitism to help governments in determining what crosses the line. And the definition gives an opportunity to call out modern forms with respect to the state of Israel when it includes as examples what we know is true, that denying the Jewish state, calling for Israel's extermination, claiming that Israel is a racist endeavor, and singularly attacking Israel with rhetoric entirely different than that leveled against other countries. These are modern forms of anti-Semitism. The gunman who killed 11 worshipers on Shabbat morning at the Tree of Life Synagogue was inspired by the xenophobic ideology of white nationalists who believe that Jews were supporting Central American refugees traveling to our southern border in order to take their places. And they picked the Tree of Life Synagogue because they hosted a national refugee Shabbat with Hayas. Here in the United States, we've witnessed a normalization of extremist groups and conspiracy theories that either implicitly or explicitly target Jews. Our country is facing a period where national elected leaders are allowing these dangerous conspiracy theories to spread, even enabling them and refusing to condemn them. And when you welcome a conspiracy theory and extremist ideology in the pursuit of political expediency, you create space for anti-Semitism. You give an open invitation to unseemly characters and groups, some of whom felt so emboldened by this tacit endorsement from their government leaders that on January 6th, they wore their anti-Semitism literally on their sleeve. Dog whistles pierce deeply into the ears of those who are primed to hear them, regardless of who utters them. And when an elected leader makes speeches endorsing anti-Semitic language and theories and supports conspiracy groups rooted in anti-Semitism like QAnon, it contributes to the manifestation of this first IHRA example. And when you advance lies and conspiracies about our democratic process and a fairly decided election, conspiracies that are seized on by anti-Semitic extremist groups, it too adds to the form of anti-Semitism laid out in the IHRA definition. And similarly, when leaders accuse Jews of being more loyal to Israel than to the interests of America, that fits in to the IHRA definition. Or using long-standing stereotypes to make demonizing allegations about Jews and the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, a political operative, or a member of Congress, that contributes to the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism left unchecked will only keep spreading. That applies both to anti-Semitism on the political left and on the political right. And we can only effectively fight anti-Semitism if we are willing to call it out wherever it appears. To be consistent I believe, requires adopting the IHRA definition and giving our government the tools needed to protect the American Jewish community. That is an effort that I look forward to continuing to lead. And one last thing. I focused on government and politics in my remarks, but it would be helpful to use this same definition in our society as a whole. For a recent example, if the writers at Saturday Night Live were familiar with this definition, again, developed based on the long history of anti-Semitism in the world, and familiar with the definition's modern examples of what it looks like today, then they and NBC might be in a better position to understand and appreciate why so many of us were so offended by last week's unfortunate attempt at humor. I appreciate the opportunity to join with you and wish you success for the rest of your meeting.
Thank you for joining us, Congressman Deutch.